everyone. I'm Nicolette, as according to the picture, at least.
Before we dive into our topic for today, can you tell us what is it like to further your studies up to this level at such a young age? Such as what has inspired you to take the course you studied and what have made you pursue a master's and a PhD?
So, I've always been very interested in human behavior and sort of like the factors that affect human behavior. So, I was feeling a little lost during my undergrad, and I'm sure a lot of you can attest to that and have felt that before. I didn't know what to do with my life. I was 18, 19. So what I did was I just went on and took like a general business degree where I tried to figure it out. And over here, I just want to say really quickly, let's normalize not having everything figured out in your 20s. But it was really random. Someone noticed that I'm always talking about how and why people may act a certain way. And they were like, hey, why don't you just be a social scientist and, become a professor in social science? And so I actually looked into it. And then I decided to go into academia. And I had this whole dream about being a professor in social science. I want to study people for the rest of my life. And I thought that that's the only career path that is possible where I get to study people for a living. And so what I did was I ended up going to Oxford to do my master's in sociology. And then I pivoted to anthropology, currently in the United States at the University of Pittsburgh, to do my PhD. It can be really lonely sometimes, being very far away from family and friends. But that's sort of like the experience that I have pursuing academia as of now.
That was really inspiring. I totally agree with the stance you said about not having everything figured out in your 20s. Learning is a lifelong activity and there is no such thing as too late to pick up new things. Moving on, how many years did it take you to come to this level? Is the whole process overwhelming? And the most important question, is it worth it? Or having a degree is enough?
Oh God, I've been in academia since 2015. So I would say this, the academic pathway, it isn't for everyone. Not saying that you're not good enough for it, it's just that it requires a certain personality type to thrive in that environment and to be happy in that environment. See, if you require a lot of guidance and a lot of structures from like your peers and your professor, academia isn't it. But if you thrive under independence, you love managing your own schedule, you love setting your own goals. The kind of people that you see on TikTok that like have all those Notion and like super organized like bullet journals. Yeah, if you're that kind of person, academia can be an amazing experience. Fortunately, I am the latter. I like working independently. So I also love like diving deep into like particular human topics. So I'm doing field work in like different countries, writing, teaching, and reading for a living. And in the US, you also get paid a monthly stipend to do your PhD as well. So it's a job. I have to pay taxes from the money that I get from my PhD. And sort of like in my field, while I've seen like undergrads go into like UX research in tech, and the previous speaker has gone a little bit into like what UX is, I see tech companies increasingly only hiring people with at least a master's degree for like the UX research field. Some companies like Google and Facebook, for example, are exclusively looking for people with PhDs, especially because it's very research-based. So in terms of my current career choice of doing user research, having a PhD is very advantageous and can help me like rise through the ranks easier. But I will caution that this way. Advantageous, but not necessary, is what I would say. If you can get job experience, that can easily replace a PhD. It's like getting that first job, that's the hard part.
I see, I keep that in mind. It's getting a job and also getting a PhD. No matter what, it will help you. Next, if you were to describe your learning experience abroad compared to Malaysia, how different is it?
So, my learning experience abroad compared to Malaysia. My entire higher education has been overseas, so I can't really say for sure. I did my undergraduate in China as well, so we have a little bit of mixture there. But I have noticed that education in the West is slightly different in the sense where they force you to be more creative and be more assertive in your own ideas. And that was very difficult for me. It was a huge adjustment period because I was so used to like just memorizing and just regurgitating like someone else's opinions, or like an opinion that our teachers already said, this is a good opinion. So you just keep like regurgitating it. And so having to gain the confidence to provide original arguments within my writing is it's still difficult for me to today. I still have to actively check myself. And this is even despite me being a debater all throughout high school and college too.
I totally agree with that statement that you said. We definitely were not trained to give our own opinions in school. It's always regurgitating whatever we say and never having the opinion, the chance to give our own opinion. Then, as a person that has pursued international trade, sociology, and now anthropology, what have moved you to focus on this subject in regards to technology, and why did you do so?
So I guess it was a very natural transition. I was initially very interested in gender studies and intimacy. So I was studying leftover women in China. I'm not sure if most of you have heard of this, but leftover women is a label put on women above the age of 27 that are still single and unmarried. Apparently, I'm leftover too. But a few people have published books on the subject while I was doing my PhD. And in academia, it's very advantageous for your career to write something original like first out, so you become the authority on that particular subject. And it was around this time that dating apps became like a really huge deal in China. So I started pivoting towards studying that. And that's sort of how I accidentally fell into the tech world, because dating apps is technically tech.
Right, I still feel like it's a bit unfair to call women over 27 leftover women in China, but that was a very interesting turn of events about how you move from academia to tech. But moving forward, can you give us an extensive explanation on the doctorate degree that you're currently pursuing?
So this is how it sort of usually works in the US. In the US, it's typically a 5-year PhD. Within the PhD program, the first 2 to 3 years is a master's degree, and the last 2 years is your PhD. Even if you have a master's degree, you still need to go through the master's degree again, regardless if you have one. So it's like 2 to 3 years of classes. You get like a master equivalent level degree. You can waive it or you can earn the degree. In my case, I waived it because I already had a master's degree. And then 2 years of writing your dissertation and doing field work, your research basically. And then finally, you defend your dissertation proposal. I'll be defending mine next year. And typically, in anthropology at least, you can conduct fieldwork in your location of study. And for me, it's China. And in between, I teach classes. This semester, I'm teaching modern Japanese studies. So with an intimacy and gender and tech media aspect. So I teach about Pokemons, for example, or the culture of anime, maid cafes, people that hikikomori, people that like stay inside their home and refuse to leave because of the stress of just their societal stress that you just like want to lock yourself in. But that's beside the point. Yeah, exactly, Pokemon. I'm currently in my final year, but my research focus right now is dating app behavior affected by economics, motivations, tradition, family values, and politics in general.
Thank you for all information. It's very interesting to see that how you can teach modern Japanese and all the Pokemon and anime and everything. And good luck when you're finally here. I'm also quite interested in the current project that you said you're working on, which is the impact and affordances while platforms such as dating apps have on the existing social mores surrounding intimacy. Can you elaborate to the audience and I about what is that about?
So I study how like mobile platforms like dating apps is affected by the social aspects surrounding intimacy. So for example, currently the chapter that I'm working on, I ask people why they use dating apps. I'm sure some of you here have used dating apps before. So I ask them, why do you use dating apps? And they often give me very ambiguous motivations. What I mean is that motivations that doesn't sound direct. So they'll say, oh, because I'm bored, I have nothing else to do, or like, oh, just for fun. And based on that, my research shows that partly this is because of the stigma associated with dating apps. Because when you ask someone, they want to come off like, oh, like I'm not really into it and look for someone. They want to be cool. They don't want to seem desperate. And so people either convince themselves or tell others less intimate reasons, like wanting to find love or partnership.
Right, that is very interesting research. I have never looked at it from that perspective, and I totally believe that it's okay to go into dating apps without feeling any shame. And now, onto a more tech-related question, I would say. Coming from a person who has not studied technology in depth previously, do you think it is worth it to pursue a career in the technology field?
I would say definitely. As Madam Maslina has talked about quite extensively, is that there are a lot of positions within tech that needs people that haven't even taken specifically tech-based degrees. Like I'm not taking a specifically tech-based degree. I think most importantly are the skills you develop within your own specialty and seeing how you can apply them to tech. So for example, there are people in my field that come from a biotech background, or they were lawyers, or they were material engineers. But because within their own field, they have done data science, for example, or they know how to conduct surveys and conduct interviews, and they are able to transfer their skills into UX research. And I think that's what's important. Is it doesn't really matter to a certain extent. It's not too late, is what I mean. You can always transition in as long as you know how to frame your skill set. So, for example, my research skills and my understanding of human behavior can help tech companies understand their users. And like Amazon, they don't just hire computer engineers, right? It's a huge corporation. They need lawyers, they need robotic engineers, they need material engineers, they need designers, recruiters to recruit people, program managers, they need human resource, accountants, and it just takes a whole village to make a tech company run. So no matter what field you're in, most likely you can find a spot in a tech company.
I totally agree with that statement. Technology is really dependent on other fields to work, and it would definitely need more than one specialty to make a company work. In your opinion, to what lengths have technology evolved from then to now?
I can only talk about in terms of UX research. I think Professor Maslina would probably have a better idea about this. But in terms of my field, I think there's more acceptance. There's less short-term focus on just churning out a product without research. There's more thought into maybe we should try and understand what users want and need first before we go off and make an app just because we intuitively think that this app will be something that people want. And you see that app fails because in the end, people don't really want it, or the design is not intuitive. It doesn't really speak to people's needs at the current time. And so I do see more acceptance within tech companies to hire more than just software engineers and put money into hiring UX researchers as well.
Understood. I do think that great research and evaluation makes a product more efficient and effective. Next up, do you think it is important to choose a career that has some technology element wrapped in it, and why?
Well, tech is definitely a growing space that has a lot of opportunities. You don't necessarily have to be a software engineer to be in tech, because tech also tends to be a more progressive space and quick adopter of new practices. So it could be a very interesting place to work at. So for example, they are probably the first one that embrace working remotely, for example, or having more tolerance for people with disability and having funding to fund recruiting practices that would help people with, very recently, Google just pushed out a program to help people with autism to facilitate them in interviews and give them career opportunities, because only less than 29% of people with autism, diagnosed with autism formally in the US, have a job. So you see then you get to be part of something like that. You get to be part of companies that are willing to push the boundary and try different aspects of how to create a better working environment. Also free food. Free food is really nice. But apart from the free food, you get to work in projects that are very unique and can impact everyone. So for example, in Amazon, there are a lot of like departments that create products that you probably haven't even heard of yet because they are in progression. But if you've noticed, they've come up with like alarms, like home device systems. And recently I just went to an Amazon store and I saw like Echo frames, which are like glasses that has like voice assistant built in. Or Alexa, which is like the Google home voice assistant thing. And yeah, so robotics as well. And they actually have a lab that just keeps churning out different products randomly just to see if it works in the market. So like you get to work in a lot of like very interesting things that could be the next big thing. But I will also say that it's not important to choose only tech careers, because no matter what, you can work in different spaces and still contribute to the world.
That is very true. Technology really is progressive and can be meshed with any field, and you're the living proof of it. And it was really interesting to hear how AWS and Amazon give you so much exposure and also some experience. I also see that you are also a UX researcher. Could you tell us a bit more about what that is?
So think about all the products that you use. Google, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Robinhood. There is a team, sometimes several teams of UX researchers behind the products. So something, for example, in Facebook, you know that follow button? That follow button has its own team to work on that follow button. Or like maybe just like an add to cart button in Amazon. There's a whole team of UX researchers working on that one button, which is crazy, right? When you think about it, because it's actually a lot more complex than people think. They're like, oh, it's just a button there. But you need to think about, who are your users? Do they intuitively know where that is? Is it easy for them to find? Do they need to be more call to action to make sure that that is something that they could do? And so that's basically what I do. I study what people want, what people need, what are their struggles, and what can we do to make that better in terms of a product sense. So depending on companies, you may do different kind of research. For example, in bigger tech companies, UX researchers tend to do more foundational research, while UX designers tend to do more iterative research. So research that like validate a design, or say like so not so much of a deep dive into like what the psyche of users are. But that's not necessarily true for all companies. So UX researchers also need to know how to validate design. For example, decisions like what color should the button be, or where should it be, things like that. Like it should be intuitive and easier on users. Like if you put your like mouse cursor over it, is there a shadow to let you know that it's working? Like small things like that we take for granted, And UX research can also be qualitative, it can also be quantitative, or it can be mixed method. Data scientists, for example, works as UX researchers too if they want. And during non-pandemic times, you actually get to travel to different countries as well to study different groups. My friends at Facebook, they were studying the Facebook dating in India, and they got to fly first class to India to do research, which is just like, what? But like, yeah, that's the life of a researcher.
Thank you for the detailed explanation about a UX researcher, and that is very fascinating, and the job sounds crucial. UX researcher make or break a product, and how I wish we weren't living in a pandemic. It must be fun to travel around. There is a question in the chat box. It's saying, what's the average number of UX research needed in one company?
There's like a lot of contextual data that you would have to have even to make that decision. Like, how big is your company? What kind of product do you have? How complicated is your product? How much funding you have? Because it's a very relevant concern for startups, particularly whether or not they have funding for UX researchers, whether or not the people in the company even know what the value of UX research is, because there's a lot of companies where UX researchers go in and have to prove to them that UX research is important. So I can't give a straight answer, but in my opinion, every company should at least have one. Like every startup at least should at least have one.
All right, understood. Next question from me is, how do you pivot from academia or social science into tech? Why UX research in the tech instead of continuing to pursue academia?
So I was doing research and one day, and what that means is I'm just on dating apps swiping. That's my job. So I was doing research, and then I randomly found someone that works at Bumble. I don't know if any of you here heard of Bumble, and whether or not Bumble is a thing in Malaysia. But Bumble is a dating app that is owned by a female entrepreneur and focuses on having women reach out first. So only women can like initiate the first message, for example. And like this, he was a product manager there, and he suggested that I work in tech because my skills are very relevant. And I never thought of it. I never thought that it was possible that it was relevant. So I looked into it, I did some internships, and I just realized I love how fast-paced and exciting it is. I think in another life, I would have been a wedding planner because I just love, I'm sure like the organizers of Techpod can understand what I'm saying. Like, you need to put out fires just like that, and like things had to go, and then I love that. And so I thought that tech was great for someone with my personality. I also love collaborating with people with very different skill sets, because in academia, it's very easy to be siloed and be in just one area, and you just work with very specific people that knows very specific things that are in your general area. And so it's very exciting for me to get to collaborate with people with different skill sets. I also realized one thing about academia is that they tend to gatekeep knowledge. What that means is that knowledge in academia is a premium. You know, we publish research papers, yes, but how many people get to read them? You know, there are paywalls. Unless you're in university, then you have access to the journals. And also, if you read a journal paper, it is not easy to understand. Academic writing is very different, and it's not made to be accessible to people in general, which blows my mind because academic research is supposed to help people. But because of the culture of like gatekeeping, it became, I'm sorry, I'm ranting. But what I'm trying to say is it's really satisfying to see research make a direct impact in tech. Like whatever I study, I see something come out of it. I see people get excited about it. And I get to do the same thing I do in academia with a much higher impact and, you know, honestly, a much higher salary as well. So that's nice.
And I totally agree with the statement that academia tend to gatekeep research papers, because sometimes when I read some papers, I do not understand what is the point, and the whole research paper is so long-winded until I don't know what am I supposed to look for in the end. Okay, and moving on, asking for some pointers here. If anyone here wants to be a UX researcher, what would you suggest they could do to pivot into that role?
Okay, the easiest way is to do a master's or an undergraduate degree in human-computer interaction. Let me type it down. So yeah, human-computer interaction. So while you are in the program, you will get projects that you can do as well, that you can put on your portfolio. And UX research jobs typically require applicants to bring a portfolio with your past projects so you can demonstrate your skill set. Also, a lot of recruiters from companies looking for UX researchers will come looking in campuses that offers human-computer interaction course. And it will also help you develop your existing skills and pivot and strengthen it within a tech space. Human-computer interaction is also a really great subject because it's very vague. You can be as computer sciencey as you want. Basically, you can be as technical as you want, or you can be as social science as you want. It really depends on what you make of it. Now, I'm not saying this is the only way to get into UX research. That's not true. But in terms of if you want to pick a course and you want the most direct way of getting into UX research, I would suggest human-computer interaction. But basically, any job, as you can spin it as long as you have the existing skills that you need to be a UX researcher.
Got it. Human-computer interaction is the key into venturing into UX. My friends and I in IT, we took the subject last semester, and I totally agree with what you said about it being technical and also social, as there are a lot of aspects that we need to know, like you said previously, about how we need to know where to put the buttons and would the button work or not. And that is very, very crucial for products. And next, going on, are there any UX research opportunities in the region specifically?
Oh, definitely. There are a lot of growing startups in Malaysia. Even if they don't advertise for a UX research role, I highly suggest you reaching out and showing them the value you can provide as a UX researcher. That's how I got my first job. They weren't even looking for a UX researcher. I just said, look, you need one. This is why you need one, and this is why it will help. And in 3 months, I increased their user base by 280%. So, like, you make a lot of impact as a user researcher. And there are also a lot of formal opportunities in Singapore, Hong Kong, China, Indonesia, and the Philippines that I know of. In Malaysia, there's Google, there's Amazon, so there's also plenty of big tech companies that are hiring UX researchers. But I would suggest, if you want your first job going to UX research, definitely hit up some startups or go knock on some doors and put yourself out there and be like, hey, I have important skills that could help you, because it's important to have products that are informed by human needs instead of just wild speculation. Humanizing technology, as the professor mentioned too.
Okay, that was really impressive what you have done for that company. I really agree with what you said, because I'm not well versed with this topic, as I have not noticed any company that has offered. It's just us that have to go and approach them to show what we can do. And last question from us today: if you were to give some advice to a person that is just about to choose their career path in technology, what advice would you give to them to give them a nudge towards direction?
It's gonna sound super cliche, but try. Just give it a shot. I think this is not even tech related, but I feel like we are often our worst enemy. We bring ourselves down, we tell ourselves that we can't do it, that it's just too difficult, and we just give up before even starting. And I see that happening so many times. I mean, I've done that to myself. I tell myself I'm not good enough for this, or I'm not good enough for that. But I'm also very stubborn in the sense where I'm not good enough for this, but I'm gonna try anyway. And oftentimes it's funny, even though I think that just because I tried, I've gotten opportunities that I didn't think I would have gotten if I didn't just put myself out there. So basically, shoot your shot and understand that there will be challenges and a lot of rejections. A lot. And rejections suck, but you have to be okay with it. You have to develop some way to cope with it and know that it is not because of you. It's not because you're not good enough. It's that they don't recognize your value yet, and perhaps you have to develop a way to show your value in a more clearer fashion. But in no means does it mean that you're not good enough. So just keep trying. Just keep trying through all the rejections. I promise you, it will work out eventually. One way or another, it will help you land where you are supposed to land. And that is my solemn belief. So whatever career or degree you are in, tech space, they need your skill set. You just have to find concrete ways, even through volunteering, to show that your skills are transferable.
Those are very great advice. I do believe I should apply. We just have to be confident in our skills. Wow, that was a lot of information to take in and ponder about. With that, our session with Ms. Nicolette has sadly come to an end. My team and I would like to express our gratitude to you for gracing us with your presence and for wanting to share your knowledge and experience with us. We are forever grateful for that. Attention to all audience, our committee has sent a feedback form in the chat box. Please fill in the form if you have any questions on the topic. We will now proceed the Q&A session for Module 2. Participants, you are encouraged to raise your hands and speak up. But if you are unable to do so, we will gladly read the comments in the chat box. Alright, we have a question here from Miss Estilo. She's pursuing a degree in psychology and is comfortable with researching. and therefore she was looking of doing an internship in UX in Malaysia. But when she looks up, there's only UI and UX jobs where coding-related skills are not needed.
Okay. So I would say this. I've tried looking for UX research related jobs in Malaysia and even Singapore. Very rare. I agree. There are very, very few opportunities if you're looking for in LinkedIn. If you're looking through LinkedIn and if you're looking for formal jobs and formal internships to apply for, UX research is still relatively new in the tech space. Well, actually, no, it's been here for like 20 years, but it's only gaining popularity in the recent years. I would suggest it doesn't mean that you can't transition into UX. It just means that you have to be a little bit more thick-faced and contact people. Like, I'm sure like there are different like startup pods that you can go to. Maybe they've like gotten VC funding or Series A funding, and they're very accessible. The CEOs typically have their emails like just out there. Email these people, pitch yourself, give them a portfolio. Tell them I'm very interested in what you do. I think that I can make an impact this by doing this, and this for you. Would you be happy to have a coffee chat through Zoom or something for 30 minutes even? And then you just go in and go like, come in with a portfolio, show them what you can do. And here's the best part. If you do this informally and just like reach out to people to try to get a job, you have zero competition. When you apply for a job, like everybody else can see the application. Everyone else can apply. But if you go and knock on someone else's door and go like, hey, I think you need me, you're the only person competing for the job. And that's happened to me before, where they don't even have a UX research intern position. I just tell them, hey, this is my portfolio, this is what I can do. Could I just have 30 minutes to chat about like your product? Tell me what your goals are, and let's see if my skills align with what you are moving towards. And I've had 2 jobs just from doing that. They made a whole job for me because of that. So yeah, definitely just reach out. And you don't particularly only have to reach out in Malaysia too. Now with like remote work, you can reach out in the UK where there's a lot more opportunities for UX research, for example. I've in Europe, in the US, maybe US might be a little bit more difficult, but I would say Europe and the UK would be much easier. Malaysia, like, spread your wings. Just go out there and just put yourself there. I'm sorry, that was very long-winded.
It's fine. Thank you so much for the information and guidance. I totally agree with what you said about just putting yourself out there, because I believe employers would be more keen to take you to the job if you show that you are brave and you're confident with your skills. Next question from the audience. What is the difference between UI and UX, and what jobs can we find to major in UI?
Sorry, I was distracted by the volunteering thing. Yes, I do agree. Volunteering is another way to go. My first project was just me going up to a kebab truck, and I knew they had a website. So I went up to the kebab truck owner and I was like, "Can I do UX research for you? You don't have to pay me." And that was my first project. So, yeah, just go out there and volunteer. That's another good way to do it, and you can put it on your resume as well. Sorry, the next question was, what's the difference between UI and UX? What jobs can we find to major in UI? Okay, so UI is user interface and UX is user experience. So user experience would cover like a more broad spectrum. So we are not just talking about like people's experience with the UI, with the interface directly. You're also researching who are your users. So one thing that we do very much is like we do personas or we do journey maps. That sounds very alien, but basically personas are what are the archetypes, the type of people that use your app. So for example, I would say, just off the top of my head, what's an app that people use? TikTok, let's say TikTok. So the archetype for TikTok users will probably be, between the age of like 15 to like 22. There are big subset are college students, big subset are like people that are early in their career, big subset are just people in high school, and each of them would have very different personality traits. and each of them would have very different user journeys. When would they typically open the app or have a chance to even open the app? A high schooler have to go to school at a certain amount of time, maybe they're not allowed their phones, things like that. Like trying to understand people's lives in general. I've seen people do research where they straight up go into someone's house and just observe how they live, and how they interact. So, for example, there was one, they were working with, I think, voice assistant. So basically, they just had a researcher in their house, and they just went about their day and see if they use their like Google Home, and whatever they do, they note it down. And it's just, yeah, it's a lot bigger than just the interface. It encompasses like the entire user experience.
All right, thank you so much. Another question. There's in the comments, aside from boot camps, what would be a good place to practice and study UX?
Oh God, boot camps. I'm personally not a fan of boot camps, but I know that it works for some people. Some people do go for boot camps. I would warn that some boot camps are scams. A lot of boot camps are scams. So definitely keep that in mind if you want to go the boot camp route. But a good place to practice and study UX, honestly, reading a lot, being part of the community a lot. So there are like Facebook pages or like Discord Discord groups that does UX research, and you can like talk to them and get like experience from there as well. Another thing you could do is do mock projects. Pretend like you're working for Spotify and say that Spotify has this problem. How would I try to go about solving it? Like having actual practice doing something is very helpful. There are also a lot of free YouTubers out there that do amazing UX research content that helps you get started, that tutors you through like, oh, this is your first product. They give you assignments and you can do assignments as well and things like that. Let me write down one of their names, Kevin Liang, and then another one is Ayona Yang. I think Kevin Liang is a UX researcher at Uber. He used to be. Ayona Yang is a UX researcher at Google.
All right, thank you so much. There is also another question. It says, when you volunteer, what software you need to have, just in case startups have limited budget and they can't sponsor you?
Well, here's the good part. If you're still a student, you have access to a lot of different things that would be free to you. Like Qualtrics, for example, would be free to you. Qualtrics is a survey app. And honestly, you really do not need all those fancy like softwares or apps. I've made do with Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint to do like my user journey maps, and just good old fashioned sketching. And yeah, Notion, there's so much you can do with very simple tools to do UX research. You really don't need something fancy. Even with like trying to analyze qualitative data, you typically, some people would use apps like Envivo, right, to start tagging and making sense of like your interview. You can do that through Excel. It's all about being resourceful, and being resourceful is also very rewarding, because then in the future when your employers like ask you, you're like, oh, I have been able to do this. A lot of different programs as well. If your school don't have it, schools typically have a lot of the programs, but if your school don't have it as well, they usually have like a free trial, or they have like, oh, maybe you can talk to 2 or 3 people and run like 2 or 3 usability tests, for example, in this one program. Use that. Create as many accounts as you want, but it's all about trying to get the experience for now.
Thank you so much. Another question, can UX researcher become a UX designer?
Yes. Although I see the other way around a little bit more. I've seen UX designers become UX researchers more often rather than UX researchers become UX designers. But no, yes, you can definitely do that. UX researcher will be more research focused, but UX designer have more design elements. So you have to be artistic. You need to know how to draw. You need to know how to use Figma or Photoshop, different things like that, where you are InVision. I think that's another very popular one, where you are able to like create prototypes. If you're a UX researcher, you don't have to create prototypes necessarily. So it really depends on what kind of skills you have and what kind of skills you want to use for work.
All right, understood. Another question. Do you have to do your own research on user research in Amazon, or the company provides basic training? If so, can you summarize what you have learned?
Oh, they have no basic training. I'm so sorry to tell you. They will teach you. They will not teach you anything. If you're expecting to go in to have your hand held, they will not do that because tech is competitive. The space is very, very competitive. They want to hire people that already kind of know their thing. So, but I would say if you want to do your own, I had to do a lot of my own research on user research, and reading Medium is another very good one. The two YouTube channels that I suggested are also very good places to start. They also offer courses in Coursera that are free that you could also do that will get you through the basics of UX research. If I were to summarize what I've learned, I'm not quite sure actually. There's so much. I think the first thing that is very important to learn is the lingo. Funny, right? The lingo is actually very important. And research methods. So knowing the kind of research methods, when do you use certain kind of research methods for what research questions is very important. And I think that's the first thing I will focus.
Thank you so much. Another question. Would UX researcher really need to have professional coding skills and such, or it depends?
No, you don't. You can have zero coding skills. I have zero coding skills. I don't even like to do quantitative research. I can do it. I just don't like to do it. And so when I apply for jobs, I'm like, I am purely qualitative. So no, you do not need coding skills. But if you have coding skills, it is a plus. You will be more employable if you have coding skills, but it's not necessary.
All right, thank you so much for that. Another question. It is quite hard for you to catch up studying due to your... Is it quite hard for you to catch up studying due to your profile, or you have choice changing uni? And does it cost a lot of money?
I don't quite understand the question.
I think what the person is trying to say, due to your different majors, and does the uni cost a lot because you're studying in Oxford and Pittsburgh?
Okay. For my undergrad, I got a scholarship. For my master's, I got a scholarship, and for my PhD, the university pays you every month. And as for like related to changing my major, it's very similar. So sociology and anthropology is pretty similar, so it wasn't like a hard sell to shift. I just switched over to anthropology mainly because I like the qualitative aspect a little bit more, but I can still stay in sociology and do the exact same research. And my first major is business because, like I mentioned, I still didn't know what I wanted to do, and that was just like my placeholder. But at the end of the day, when I apply for jobs and they see that I have a business major, it's always helpful. And yeah, so no, I wouldn't be able to afford it so if I didn't have the opportunity to get funding aid.
Mm-hmm. There's another question. You stated that masters in human computer interaction is useful, but a PhD told me to always go for clinical side before venturing specifically in the field I want to specialize in. Should justify the reason as it lays the fundamental groundwork in our rationale and thinking.
Maybe this is a preference. I think that's just a preference. I think human-computer interaction is most direct. If you go for clinical psychology, I've known people that transfer from clinical psychology or social psychology. It's possible to move to UX research, but I don't think that's the most direct path. You won't have recruiters coming to the clinical psychology department during recruitment cycle to recruit you, but you won't get opportunities to do projects that would be helpful for job hunts. But I do agree that it does lay fundamental groundwork in rationale and thinking. However, you can also get that in human-computer interaction. So I would say that human-computer interaction is, again, if you want to go for clinical psychology, that is one way you can do it. But my advice, if you want to go extremely directly into it, would be human-computer interaction. And as you seem to be very interested in UX research, they should provide you with my email, and feel free to email me and schedule a coffee chat. I'm more than happy to talk you through some of the questions that you have.
Thank you for the explanation. There is also another question from the audience, how can engineering student enter information technology field post-graduation? Are there any specific requirements?
How can engineering students enter information technology field post-graduation? Are there any specific requirements? I'm not very familiar with that field, so I'm sorry. I don't know if I am the best person to ask that.
All right, it's fine. Another question from YouTube Live. What are the required skills that every graduate needs in order to pursue a successful career in this field?
Research. You need research skills, you need curiosity, you need to have empathy. That's weird to say, but empathy is very important in a UX researcher. To be able to empathize with your users and not ridicule them if they don't know how to use something, but sort of like try to understand why and where and how. And also a continuous learning. You need to be the kind of person that wants to continue to learn because there's always new research methods that come out, always new debates that come out about how to do research better. And so I think there's a lot of soft skills required, apart from having like solid hard skills that are just research. But yeah, research is your basis. Knowing how to interview people, for example, or if you are like the quant person, knowing how to create surveys that are not biased, knowing how to analyze surveys and analyze your interview transcripts, things like that.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the floor? All right, there's another one. What is your opinion about technology progress in 5 years ahead?
I can't really speak to UX research, but I see it moving in a direction where UX research becomes more and more common. Because more and more companies realize how important it is to have user research behind their decision making on their product. But that's probably my stance on like UX research. I can tell you what's going to go on with dating apps, but I don't know if that's specifically the answer that you will be looking for.
All right. Thank you. Is there any more question from the floor? All right. I believe we have no other questions left. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Mr. Glad, for the answers.